The Russia-Ukraine conflict escalates further. I'm Marco Perry. Welcome to the Perry Platform. Global risk has shot up dramatically over the past week. I recall at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine conflict there were jokes that World War III was happening. Well, the recent escalations make that ever more possible. In fact, if a couple of the things that we talk about today actually happen, you're going to have World War III. And that's quite scary. A lot of people aren't recognizing the situation that we're in right now. We are literally one misstep away from a global outbreak of violence. Anyone who is pretending, whether in the media or through popular influencers, that the current developments are a simple matter, are simply being dishonest. The complexities continue to stack, and we have to understand this if we're going to navigate the terrain optimally. So let's just get caught up on recent events. First of all, last week, Putin declared that 4 new regions of previously or currently Ukraine, however you want to look at it, are now Russia. Moscow illegally annexed those parts of Ukraine. How did they do that? Well, throughout the invasion, they've gained ground. And now Putin is simply saying that I've conquered it, it is mine. And there are also these very controversial referendums that came out. Putin or Russia was declaring that something like over 90% of the residents in the captured territory want to be a part of Russia. Now, these are heavily contested. People are claiming that there's fraud involved, but however you look at it, you can take a step back. It's a tragedy that the land was annexed to begin with. Ukraine certainly deserves applause for holding their ground, but from the get-go we knew that Russia was a massive military force. And they would capture ground, and they would annex it. So this part is not surprising. There are a couple more developments here that did raise an eyebrow though. As a result of these movements, Ukraine has now submitted an application for a fast-track NATO ascension. Now, in a vacuum, this is good. Making NATO stronger, extending that protection to more countries, that's a positive thing. But in the context of the current situation, this is quite worrisome for a variety of reasons. First of all, just understand what being a part of NATO entails. It means that if you are being attacked, or you go to war, all members of NATO must come to your defense. If this NATO application is approved and Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, we are literally in a world war. Because as a member of NATO, all other states are obliged to help out. And that means Canada, America, much of Europe, and all our other allies are now at open war with Russia. And what's Russia going to do? Well, they could back down. But they haven't done that thus far, in the face of crippling sanctions and whatnot. Perhaps they rally. Perhaps they try to find their own allies. Perhaps they realize that nuclear war is so catastrophic they don't even need allies to cause massive damage to much of the West. When you're playing this type of chess game, you also have to factor in what type of man you're facing. Do you think that Putin is simply going to tuck his tail between his legs once Ukraine joins NATO? I doubt that. He has a lot to lose. When you are an authoritarian leader, your perception is everything. If the people start to doubt you, if the people that you're subjugating decide that you're no longer the right leader for them, you're finished. And you're as good as dead. They will overthrow you. An authoritarian leader holds his power through a sleeping populace. If the populace wakes up and they fight back, you're cooked. So does he have a choice here? Probably not. He will likely escalate further, is my bet. And this is what he's hinted as we'll talk about in a second. But this is a fascinating move. Now, do I think that NATO will accept the application? I do think this is just a gesture. I do think they've done this to make Russia reconsider their movements or something like that. I don't think NATO is interested in escalating to the point of a world war, because that is literally what's going to happen if Ukraine does join. Now, this is conflicting, obviously, because I do want Ukraine in NATO. But the question that we all have to grapple with is at what cost, and is now the right time? These situations are not black and white. There is fallout, and the fallout could be catastrophic. Many commentators who I hear speak seem to not be grasping this reality. The situation is extremely delicate. To be so cavalier is foolish, and perhaps they're doing that because they're so disengaged with the reality of conflict because we've been relatively peaceful for generations at this point, but that paradigm can change very quickly. Now, in other news, on the NATO front, they released a statement saying that serious escalations, which is what Putin was threatening, will not deter it from supporting Ukraine. And here I think they've chosen their words very carefully. They did not say it will not deter them from accepting Ukraine into NATO. They simply said supporting, and I think they've shown their hand with that. They will continue to provide Ukraine with military aid, arms, and whatever else they can do. But I do believe they're going to fall short of accepting that application. This does raise another question, though, and that is how effective will this support be if Ukraine is left alone? Once again, there's complexity here. We've already seen what Russia can do. They've mobilized and annexed 4 new regions already, and seems like they have the ability to continue to steamroll throughout the country. We can provide Ukraine with military aid and weaponry and all that, but from a pure number standpoint, they're dwarfed by Russia. The military strength is not equal. They've done a great job holding out, but holding out seems to be their best case scenario. Now, we enter this tricky situation where it seems like a reality of defeating Russia will have to come through military alliances with other countries, but bringing in alliances like that will further escalate things and maybe nobody wins a nuclear war. And that's what we're grappling with right now. How does this end? Now, on Russia's front, Putin came forward and said that, well, the United States did create a nuclear precedent by bombing Japan. He's referring to the nuclear bombs that were dropped on them during World War II. Now, first of all, this is not accurate. I wouldn't call it a precedent. If you were to drop bombs, nuclear bombs, in another country now preemptively, I don't believe it would be received well by the world. World War II was a very different time. A precedent would have to stand to be a precedent, and I doubt it would. Further, all this talk of nuclear warfare is disheartening. To see that we're actually at a place where that's on the table is insane. If there was a way for humanity to erase itself, this is quite possibly the best way we can think of. To render the earth inhospitable, to incinerate massive amounts of our global population. Nukes can do that. Now, keep in mind that there is some game theory here. The question that often comes up as well, why haven't the nukes been dropped yet? And the answer there is because Russia, NATO, America, all the parties currently with nukes who are thinking about possibly using them don't want to die. It's a simple equation. If Russia were to nuke a Western ally, well, there'd be many nukes going back to Russia. And you're both dead. This is called a deterrence policy. It's a policy where if you hit us, we'll hit you. And you and everyone you love will die. That's quite a motivation to stay away from nuclear weaponry. Now, this equation only works though when you're dealing with a rational actor. What if the person you're dealing with who has control of the nukes doesn't mind dying? Or what if dying in warfare is preferable to dying at the hands of an upset mob? Well, then the situation becomes more dire. If Putin finds himself in a situation where launching nukes is his best option, then he might just do it, even if it renders much of the country destroyed. If the alternative is Putin losing the war and the Russian citizenry tearing him apart, him having to pull a Hitler and to kill himself in the bunker, he might consider all the options available to him. At a strategic level, what we have to do to end this war is offer an out. Putin has to be given a chance to save face. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to find an end to this. I think Putin has bit off more than he can chew here. To take over all of Ukraine, I don't see that happening. He has annexed 4 territories, though. If Putin has to return those territories, for example, after declaring them part of Russia, the disgrace that he'd have to face at that point might be too much to make it possible. He might simply reject all of this out of pride and out of consequence. He might be too afraid of what would happen to him. If we can provide a situation where things can end and he won't have to look like a loser, and Ukraine could still be Ukraine. Given the complicated and dire situation that we're in, that seems to be the best case scenario. I don't see Russia taking over all of Ukraine. And I don't think Ukraine can fight back against Russia's military might and recapture all the territory. And I don't think that starting a world war is a good idea. And I don't think that nuclear weaponry being put on the table is a good thing. So, given all of these bad options, which is the lesser of the evils? Which one will deliver us from this very unstable ground that we're on? Now, only time will tell, but the way things are looking, we do need a solution quick, and a solution that will leave us intact. A solution that will deliver some type of peacemaking. Otherwise, the possibility of a global war is knocking on our door right now. Now with that, it does bring us to the end of our conversation for today. If you enjoyed the material, be sure to leave a review and share. It'll help us grow. And you can find me online at perryplatform.org and on social media at perryplatform. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon.